Live after Iowa, will the real progressive please stand up? This is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Tuesday, February 2nd, 2016. Just full confession and full transparency, I am not doing well tonight. Whatever bug my kids had, my wife then got. My baby girl had it on Friday. My son got it on... No, my wife got it on Sunday. My son got it last night or yesterday. I end up having to stay home with him today. And right now, it is hitting me. So, if you see me run away from the computer screen during the middle of the show, just know everything's all right. I'll be back in about 45 minutes. No. So anyway, welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. As I try to keep some fluids in me, I really wanted to start with this amazing clip of Bernie Sanders in an interview outside of Iowa, New Hampshire, rather. Iowa is over. Hillary Clinton won Iowa. Let's be good sports, right? Let's be good sports. There's still some questions in terms of how ridiculous Iowa caucusing is. It is rather ridiculous. Let's just be realistic. You know, anything that determines the direction of our nation that must be decided with the flip of a coin toss. That's a bit absurd. Nevertheless, you know, Hillary Clinton just eked by what, 0.3 percentage points. And so I'm going to give Hillary Clinton a hand out of being a good sport. Now, that being said, that being done, she barely won. Let's just be real. Let's be realistic. Here's an interesting narrative that developed this morning. The spin game, the game of spinning, is a beautiful art. I love it. The reason I love it is because I can always unpack it like that. You know, I smell propaganda and spin like bacon in the morning or something, like a fresh pot of coffee in the morning. I can smell propaganda. The spin that came out of this was, well, this is the Bernie Sanders' camp, and Bernie Sanders supporters are so disingenuous and such poor losers that they can't recognize history, that Hillary Clinton is the first woman to ever win the Iowa primary caucuses, and they could just say, congratulations, Hillary, instead of being spoiled. Yeah, that's the narrative that has come out. Then there was this other guy, right? This other guy, let me see if I can find his tweet, who basically said that, oh, here's another guy off of Twitter. You know, you have these Twitter heroes that have been in the game for a very long time. And by the game, I mean, they've been on social media for a very long time. So they have relatively large followings. And one guy said, when you can barely get more, or rather, when you don't get as many energetic voters out as Barack Obama, you can't call it a revolution. Well, turnout wasn't just a Bernie Sanders problem last night, which, interesting enough, if I can go on a tangent before I give my retort to that statement, Hillary Clinton was on MSNBC with Harbaugh with Chris Matthews, and she called it a record turnout because she knows that if the turnout was lower, it was in her benefit. So she just outright says it was a record turnout, which it wasn't. 2008 was a record turnout of 240,000 people, Democratic caucus goers for Barack Obama. 2016 was not a record turnout. I think the final number was around 180,000, give or take 10,000. I forgot what it was. But it was nowhere near 240,000. But that didn't keep Hillary Clinton from saying that this was a record turnout, because that counters the narrative that she benefits from a low turnout, which she did. The turnout was low. If a few more apathetic college students would have got off their butts, and a few more revolutionary older people would have gotten off their butts and went and caucused for what are they called? They're called delegate equivalents. 4 delegate equivalents separated Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. So if just 4 delegate equivalents had gotten off their butts and went and showed up for Bernie Sanders, she would not have won. Turnout should be across the board a Democratic Party concern. However, low turnout benefited Hillary Clinton. Low turnout always benefits the establishment because the establishment has people who are going to turn out no matter what. And so to counter that narrative, Hillary Clinton on Chris Matthews, who said a whole lot, but this is just the first thing, said that it was a record turnout. That's not true. But I want you to understand the reason she would say something like that is because she needs to fight back against this narrative that she benefits from low turnout and she benefits the same way a conservative establishment candidate would benefit, which she does. But you can't have that narrative out there because last night she declared, I am a progressive. Now, let me go all the way back to this guy, Shock, whatever his name is on her name. I don't know. They're fearless, but they always hide behind that avatar. They said you can't call it a revolution with low turnout. And you know what? You're right. You can't call it a revolution, but you sure as hell can't call it a coronation with that type of turnout. You know, there's nothing to brag about in terms of how low the turnout was last night, except for the fact that it benefited Hillary Clinton. And anyone who benefits, anyone who benefits from fewer debates and fewer lower turnouts is so entrenched in the establishment, the quintessential establishment representative candidate, that how can you ever believe they're going to do something other than what we currently have? All right, so that's just the opener. I just thought that was so blatantly a lie. Right? There was no record turnout, but it was beneficial for her to say that it was because everyone knows she benefited from a low turnout. That is political spin 101. And that's what they did all day long yesterday. All day today. Really, it was, Bernie Sanders. He's a spoiled sport. He won't award Hillary Clinton and concede. And you know what? Here's the other thing I realize. Whenever you don't do something that your opponent thinks you should do, maybe because you're just a tad bit smarter than they think you should be. Whenever you don't do exactly what they say, whenever you show you have enough backbone to stand on your own accord and make your own decisions, they call you arrogant. And this is the second narrative that's being spun for Bernie Sanders, is that he's some type of arrogant old white man. We'll talk about the white privilege in a second, but right now it's just his arrogance. How dare Bernie Sanders not agree to these debates that Hillary Clinton all of a sudden wants? And this is the new narrative that now he's playing a game. Now now Bernie Sanders wants to suppress. You got to stand by. I've got a bucket nearby. Bernie Sanders wants to suppress debate. When since the very beginning of them saying we are only going to have 6 debates, Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley have both been yelling at the top of their lungs, along with their supporters, we should have more debates. All of a sudden, he pulls within striking distance in Iowa, and now all of a sudden they want to have an Iowa town hall. Not a debate, but a town hall. He's up 20 points in New Hampshire. Now they want to have a New Hampshire town hall and a debate. And now she wants to have a debate inside of Flint, Michigan, but she doesn't want to have one in New York, in her own the city, not New York City, where she represented as a senator, which it really matter. She statewide as a senator, but anyway, you get the point. She only wants to have these debates in places that are electorally beneficial to her, which is a smart play. I'm not insulting Hillary Clinton for making a smart political play, but do not insult our intelligence when we call you on your shenanigans, right? When we can see your political play. We don't have to go along with that just so that you could pat us on the back and say, wow, you're so not arrogant. You're such a good candidate. Thank you for acquiescing to the thing that's going to help me beat you. It doesn't work like that. But because Bernie Sanders has said the only way I'll debate is if we agree to even more debates. We don't want to debate in Michigan after the primary in Michigan. We want to debate in Michigan before the primaries. We don't want to skip over New York. We don't want to skip over California. We want to debate just like it should have been before Debbie Wasserman Schultz arbitrarily decided that we're going to cut it down to just 6. Because at the time, the conventional wisdom was if we only have 6 debates, it won't hurt Hillary Clinton as much. Now that we see it did hurt Hillary Clinton, now all of a sudden they want to change the game. And because Bernie Sanders, I know I'm being redundant, but I want to make sure this seeps in. Because Bernie Sanders has decided not to acquiesce to their demands, to something that's going to benefit her and not him, he has more to lose in New Hampshire because he's already up in New Hampshire. Hillary Clinton wants to close the gap in New Hampshire or possibly take over in New Hampshire. So, of course, she wants to have more debates. But because Bernie Sanders is actually intelligent enough, I think a kindergartner is intelligent enough to realize that she's only doing this because she's behind and she does not want to agree to any other debates that would give Bernie Sanders an advantage, but he must agree to debates that's going to give her an advantage because he's doing what is in his best interest. He is somehow arrogant. And that, my friends, is political spin 102. I would say that's sophomore level political spin. Then the next political spin that came out of last night was Bernie Sanders barely won or lost, not barely won. Bernie Sanders barely lost, whatever. I'm dealing with a bug. So if I'm incoherent for about 2 seconds, understand I've got some stuff going on here. Bernie Sanders lost in an all-white liberal state. And if he can't win in an all-white liberal state, then he really doesn't stand a chance in New Hampshire. He doesn't stand a chance in South Carolina. He doesn't stand a chance because he can't even win in an all-white liberal state. Somewhat to suggest that this old white man is more a beneficiary of whitedom, of whiteness in America than Hillary Clinton is a beneficiary of whiteness. Somehow, this is the thing that trips me up the most. And this goes across the board for Hillary Clinton supporters, whether they're black or Hispanic or whatever. They feel like somehow Hillary Clinton is more or is less a recipient of white privilege in America than Bernie Sanders. Because Bernie Sanders is a white man in America. Hillary Clinton is more oppressed and does not receive as much privilege, even though Hillary Clinton is estimated to be worth between $25 and $100 million, and Bernie Sanders is worth like $700,000. That's about as much as Hillary Clinton makes in one speech for Goldman Sachs. But this narrative from Iowa, which is so convenient, is that Bernie Sanders is a recipient of white privilege such that he should have clearly won Iowa, which is an overwhelmingly white state, which he clearly should have had the privilege of just walking a cakewalk, because as we all know, Hillary Clinton does not receive the benefit of white privilege. Yeah, that is, let's see if I can open up these comments over here without, yeah. That is spin 102, 103. I'm sorry. They're on the junior level. So the first spin was, I don't even know if I can recount everything I just went through. Matter of fact, I'm not going to try tonight. Normally I could. I can't tonight. Just rewind the tape. And I think that might have been some of the more nefarious spins that came out of that. So he's a beneficiary of white privilege that Hillary Clinton is not a beneficiary of. He's a spoiled sport because he won't agree, or he's arrogant because he won't agree to the debates. And he could not just give this moment to Hillary Clinton. He could not concede that she won, even though it should be a historical moment that we should all pause and celebrate for Hillary Clinton because she's the first woman to win. Listen, here's the thing about that. I see a lot of women. Shit, I don't care. I mean, I've been called so many more things than a misogynist, right? That's the last thing. The last thing you want to do is get somebody who's been called everything possible that they don't even care what you call them anymore. So call me a misogynist. It's hard to be excited about the first woman winner of the Iowa caucuses when they are such an entrenched candidate. Sorry, I'm not running around celebrating. I might run around celebrate if she happens to beat Bernie Sanders and happens to beat Marco Rubio, which I don't believe is going to happen. I will take a moment and pause and celebrate the achievement here in the United States that finally, after all of these years, all of these decades, all of these presidents, we finally have a woman president, because that is something to be proud of. But that is not the totality of what we should be concerned with in this election. Because when you have a candidate who is the quintessential, the epitome of establishment, I got to stop all this moving, man. When you have somebody who is the quintessential definition of an establishment politician, then what is there to celebrate for the rest of us who are on the receiving end of the establishment? So I'm sorry if we are more concerned with, yes, Chris Matthews, a political and economic revolution, then we are just doing the checkbox for a woman president. I will celebrate. Even if it's Hillary Clinton, I will take about 5 minutes and I will celebrate and say, you know what? Damn it. We finally did it. We have a woman president in the United States. But I would run cartwheels and my big behind would turn cartwheels down the Lincoln Monument, down the reflection pond, the reflecting pool. I can't even think right now if it was Elizabeth Warren. Because not only did we achieve a significant milestone in electing the first woman president in the United States, but we would have made a significant milestone in electing a real progressive president of the United States. Or at least one that tells us she's progressive. And let's see how she would have reigned when she got into office. I don't know. You never know with politicians. But I definitely believe Sanders and I believe Warren far beyond, I believe, Hillary Clinton. Which I forgot. I don't even know what my fourth level of propaganda was. I was just making that up as I went. I was just recounting all the bullshit that I heard all night long, all throughout the day. You know, oh, he's so arrogant. Why? Because he's smart enough not to fall for your political games. Oh, he's such a sore loser. He can't even recognize a historical moment. Why should we celebrate someone who is the quintessential establishment player who should have won at the beginning of the summer? She was up by 50 points. So excuse me if the narrative actually reflects something that is more of an accomplishment than a person who was down by 50 points at the beginning of the summer, a self-proclaimed democratic socialist, someone that everyone, even his own party, is labeling as a communist, beats the heir apparent or gets within 0.3 points of the heir apparent. I do believe that is a more significant narrative for last night. Catch me on, let's see if she beats him and she manages to beat Marco Rubio, which I don't think she can, then see me at the inauguration. And I will say, here, we have a woman president. I'm excited about having a woman president, but she's not progressive. And I'm going to call her on the carpet every single day. Here's the funny thing. Side note before I play some video. I want to play some video of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. That's hilarious. It would be beneficial for my industry. Let's just be full transparency. It would be beneficial for my industry across the board, from the Young Turks to David Pakman to the Secular Talk to the Humanist Report to the Sane Progressive to MSNBC. Hell, shit, it would be great for all left-leaning media outlets to have a Republican win. It would be great for business, horrible for our country. But I don't think people realize that if Hillary Clinton wins, it's going to be just as good because she's not a progressive. And we have plenty of stuff to call her out on every single day because she's not a progressive. It would be horrible for the country, not really bad for business. That's why Fox News has done so good over the last 8 years. Nothing is more profitable than opposition. Running in the opposition is always the most profitable and the easiest to obtain political capital based on. Man, I hope I can make it through the show tonight, folks. All right, let me play a video. Anyway, here's Hillary Clinton. Here's a question that came from a reporter let me see. How did I piece this together? I think I did a snippet together of the reporter today in New Hampshire asking Bernie Sanders what he thought about Hillary Clinton's progressivism. That's one. But then also what she said last night. Anyway, this is actually what I wanted to start the show off with. Listen into this.
Do you think Hillary Clinton is a progressive? Do you think Hillary Clinton is a progressive?
Barely.
I wanted to start the show with that. All right. It was a waste of my time, but I just had to do it. Is Hillary Clinton a progressive? Barely. Here's Hillary Clinton last night where she claims that she is a progressive. And I want you to listen in, and I'll actually show the video here. Listen in.
I am a progressive who gets things done for people.
Do you think Hillary Clinton is a progressive?
Some days, yes. Except when she announces that she is a proud moderate.
I said we could have a moderate tax cut. You know, I get accused of being kind of moderate and center. I plead guilty. I think sometimes it's important when you're in the elected arena, you try to figure out how do you bring people together to get something done.
All right, that kind of went by fast. The first clip is last night in Iowa. Hillary Clinton saying, I am a progressive. You know, I'm a progressive that likes to get things done. Today in New Hampshire, the reporter asked Bernie Sanders, do you think she's a progressive? And the most wonderful soundbite ever, some days, until she declares she is a moderate, a proud moderate. And then you had the clip from, I think it was earlier this year. Yeah, it was earlier this year, right after she announced that she was running, that she confessed, I am a proud moderate. So let's play that again so that you understand all the different pieces.
I am a progressive who gets things done for people.
Do you think Hillary Clinton is a progressive?
Some days, yes. Except when she announces that she is a proud moderate.
I said we could have a moderate tax cut. You know, I get accused of being kind of moderate and center. I plead guilty. I think sometimes it's important when you're in the elected arena, you try to figure out how do you bring people together to get something done.
To get something done, Hillary, in the context of that exact clip, she was talking about the Bush tax cuts. She was talking about her first term as a senator, and the new Republican president, George Bush, wanted to do these drastic tax breaks, and she decided to stretch her legs as a senator and say, well, we can do some moderate tax breaks. And she confessed that I am a moderate. Now, in general, there's nothing wrong with being a moderate if it was a true moderate. Moderates today are center-right. Let's be realistic. You know what? Let's do this. I'm going to interrupt that whole thought. Maybe this caller can give me a respite on talking. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, it's David. I'm going to give you a bit of a break.
Thanks, man.
I wanted to go back to no problem. I want to go back to a few points you made earlier. You mentioned it a couple times where a lot of Hillary supporters are complaining that we're not congratulating Hillary on being the first woman to win in Iowa. Mm-hmm. I think we can all say congratulations. I don't necessarily remember. Did Jesse Jackson win Iowa when he ran with the Rainbow Coalition?
I don't believe so. I think I definitely know he won Vermont, and that was courtesy of Bernie Sanders. But while you talk about it, I'll look it up real quick. Go ahead.
Well, no. The reason my thought was because I don't specifically remember people congratulating Obama on being the first black man to win Iowa in 2008. So that came to mind. But even going beyond that point, to counter that argument, they're not, addressing their own doubts, for lack of a better word, on the fact that, they claimed there was nothing that was going to stop Hillary. There was no fuel in Bernie. Bernie wasn't going to go anywhere.
Right.
The revolution was for naught. Yeah. And now you're seeing, where Hillary started at 50 points or however many points she was in the very beginning of this, and Bernie was all the way at the bottom because he had no name recognition and for a slew of other reasons. Everyone trying to stop him, everyone trying to, push him down. Now, they want us to acknowledge that, but at the same time, they don't want to acknowledge, okay, wow, it was a tie. Maybe she, she won slightly, but you got to acknowledge, wow, that's huge. It really is a huge, huge thing. Nobody, forget about any biasness. You're ignoring that. And I think that's a real hypocrisy there.
It is a hypocrisy. It's a common play, right? Let's be fair, right? I think what people fail to realize is we recognize political game. We're not knocking you for your political game, but don't knock us for recognizing your political game, right? So I understand this tactic of, you guys aren't congratulating Hillary Clinton, blah, 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 blah. But we also know that you're only saying that so that you can forward this narrative that Bernie Sanders is a misogynist. So, no, we're not going to take the bait. We're not going to kowtow every time you throw something our way. We're not going to acquiesce every time you make a demand of us because you think we should be fearful of whatever pejorative you throw our way that day. Game recognizes game. So what happens is, this goes back to the conversation last week that we were having with PJ, is that there are people who want to be outraged and then deny you the right to be outraged. Or how dare you get outraged because I'm more of a victim. I'm more of the sufferer. My story is more compelling than your story. And it's like, I get it. It was a great win in terms of achievements for women in the United States of America.
Absolutely.
However, this was a hell of a comeback for a guy who was down 50 points in a state where everyone is saying that this socialist can't do it. So yeah, no, I agree with you, man. It was, I don't see anything here of Hillary Clinton. I just Googled it. Hillary Clinton congratulating or recognizing, and I'm sure this is just one article out of probably 500, but I'm sure somebody can Google it and find out. But to answer your question, Jesse Jackson did not win in 88 or 84. It was Richard Gephardt in 88 and Walter Mondale in 84. David, thanks so much for taking up some of that airtime for me, man.
No problem. No problem.
Take it easy. All right. 857-600-0518. You guys can help me out too. Like I said, whatever my wife had on Sunday, my baby girl had on Friday, my son had yesterday, I've got it today. And the more I talk, the worse it becomes. So but we're going to push through it. We're going to push through it. And really, there's some things that I definitely want to talk about to really drive some points home. But thank you to this caller, 215. You're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, it's Bryce.
Bryce, what's happening, man? Always good to hear from you.
Always. Last night was a very good show, very good conversation, and obviously Bernie did a pretty good job. I know he didn't win, and the reason I said about rigged last night was because obviously, Bernie wants to see what's going on with the count and seeing if everything was done fairly. And, I think he's going to win New Hampshire. I think that I still believe he's going to get it done. But obviously they're trying every trick in the book, and he's, pushing back through it all. And that caller last night, I guess the black guy that was, trolling or being the black
real brother, whatever, something. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. That basically the black conscious community, they're not helping with things that they say. I know we've talked about that, but it's just, I don't know. I just feel like we as a country, it's like we're not ready for progressiveness. Like we say we are, but then we feel like we're not a lot of times. It's like, we come out, we we say we want change, we want this, we want that, but then when it's time to put our foot down, we don't do it. Now, not all, there's a lot that does want to change and everything, and maybe just a little discouraged because we wanted Obama to be progressive, but he wasn't enough, only so far. And I still think we shouldn't give up just because of certain circumstances.
You know what? You've said a mouthful, Bryce. Let me, and you just jogged my memory because my memory is a little tapped tonight. I'm focusing on keeping everything down. But you said something that I want to address. Let me catch it off of air and catch this next line. But I want to address specifically what you just said. You said that we as America, we are not yet ready for progressivism, or at least it seems like we're not ready for progressivism. And then we get disappointed in President Obama because of the things that he didn't accomplish. Here's something that I want to correct myself on. And it hit me before I started doing this show. I had a standard talking point on President Obama. And it wasn't just a talking point. It was a reasoned position that I crafted out in terms of the lack of progressive achievements for President Obama. It was exactly what Bryce said. Not because America wasn't ready for progressivism. A lot of times we lay it at the feet of President Obama, but the reality of it was the Democratic establishment was not really ready for progressivism. Not the political left, because the political left has been shouting, let's be progressive for a very long time. But the Democratic establishment, the powers that be, the infrastructure, the party players, they were not ready for progressivism, nor did they really want progressivism. Because if they did, they would not have run away from President Obama in 2010 after he accomplished the Affordable Care Act, which was labeled as socialist when it was actually at best moderate right. But that's an entirely different story. They ran away from him. The establishment ran away from President Obama, and they lost because they would not boldly stand on the progressive principles that we hope to achieve. And so they decided that the best way for us establishment players to keep our office is to tiptoe away from President Obama. Now, they want to blame all of these establishment players, all of you who've been doing this for a long time. You want to blame the Progressive Caucus for not. Let me start that sentence over. You want to blame the Progressive Caucus for the loss in 2010 and the loss in 2014. When in actuality, it was your candidates who decidedly made the decision to run away from President Obama, giving not a single reason for us progressives to support you, one, but then two, not even your own establishment base supported you. Everybody turned out low in 2010 and 2014, and that's because establishment Democrats were fearful of President Obama's potential progressivism. It's hard to talk tonight, but we're going to make it. If you are afraid of being who you say you are, everybody smells blood in the water. Republicans did not take over in 2010 because they ran to the middle. Republicans took over in 2010 and 2014 even more so because they ran further to the right and they represented something that their base wanted. They realized that we need to stop being these mamsy-pamsy conservative rhinos, Republicans in name only, because our base is not sending us up here to be Republicans in name only. Let's be the craziest damn conservatives we possibly can be. And that's why they won. And you have this self-defeating, self-sabotaging strategy that Democrats constantly do. During midterm elections, whenever we have a Democratic president, they run to the center and you lose and you lost. And your establishment lost. And you cannot blame it on the progressives because you gave us moderate right candidates. Why would we vote for a moderate right candidate when there is a further right candidate who can do a better job at being a Republican than a Democrat can? And so now the narrative is, this is political spin 104. This is graduate level, senior level. We'll get to graduate level in a minute. The spin now becomes that it's the fault of people like Bernie Sanders that President Obama couldn't get anything done because progressives sat down in 2010 and 2014, when in actuality, everybody sat down in 2010 and 2014. Why? Because the establishment Democrats thought that it would be strategically better for them to run to the center and be more moderate than it would be to even support their moderate right President Obama. Moderate right Obamacare. They ran away from a moderate right Romney piece of legislation, a Heritage Foundation brainchild piece of legislation. They ran to the right of that. And they're surprised that Democrats said, to hell with it, let's just stay home. And now somehow that's Bernie Sanders' fault, right? And now it's Bernie Sanders who is not supporting President Obama because he's calling for us to actually be more progressive than President Obama could be. And because he understands that if we're actually going to accomplish this progressive achievement, we're going to need people down ticket. We're going to need people on the ground. We're going to need grassroots. We're going to need people in governor seats. We're going to need progressives everywhere. Which is what the blurb is actually talking about on the damn book that everyone thinks is such a nail in the coffin for Bernie Sanders, but I digress. In actuality, he's saying the obvious. President Obama was completely incapable, just like any other president is completely incapable of forwarding their agenda if they do not have support down the line. And you tell me what chicken shit cowards backed away from President Obama in 2010 and 2014? Who ran away? Who would not allow President Obama to be seen with them in public? The Democratic establishment. But now, this is somehow the Progressive Caucus's fault. This is what you have, people, ladies and gentlemen. You have people who want to shove something down your throat and say you just better like it, because if you don't like it, then a Republican is going to get into office. And you better do what we say, even though what we say is going to be just as detrimental to you as a moderate Republican, because as Hillary Clinton already conceded, she voted for the Bush tax cuts that President Obama had to subsequently come behind and undo. So yes, Hillary Clinton, you can be a moderate in a world where the center of our political discourse, the Overton window, is centered around right-leaning ideas, right-leaning, presuppositions, right-leaning framework, right? You can be a moderate in this environment that we've existed in since Ronald Reagan, and you would be a right-leaning person. In the international sense. In American politics, you can call yourself a moderate, but in the real sense of what is progressive and what is conservative, you are more of a conservative. And I think that's the bottom line, right? The bottom line is nobody wants to call a spade, but if you listen to this clip from Chris Matthews, and I can't even play the clip. Let me tell you how draconian these bastards are. I can play a clip from Fox News and share a 30-second clip and we can discuss it because of fair use, copyright fair use. If I play a clip from MSNBC or any subsidiary of NBC, I will have a copyright infringement placed on me before the end of the show. So I can't even play this clip from Chris Matthews. But I'll describe it very well. Chris Matthews has, and call it, just hang on, I'll be with you in 1 second. Chris Matthews did an interview with Hillary Clinton today. First of all, that nobody is calling out his constant interruptions, his condescending tone, his misogynistic mannerisms in which he carried himself and the way he treated Hillary Clinton. No one's going to call that out because the interview was beneficial for Hillary Clinton. I think that's graduate level propaganda that they did right there. But anyway, I digress. In this interview with Hillary Clinton, he sets the framework almost exactly like Sean Hannity would set the framework. The framework was, here you have a socialist who is threatening a revolution And he shouts revolution at his rally with all of these young people, and all of the young people just start applauding. And he's described it, Chris Matthews describes this as something that should be terrifying, because we have this self-avowed socialist, and nobody wants to be called a socialist, according to an older episode of Hardball. Nobody wants to be called a socialist. Chris Matthews definitely doesn't want to be called a socialist, but Bernie Sanders calls himself a socialist. And now he's rallied all these young people to be behind him. And then he asked Hillary Clinton this question. He said, do you think Bernie Sanders will ever learn? And he stopped mid-tracks. He said, well, no, Bernie Sanders will never learn. He said, do you think we can teach these young people that that's not how America works? We're going to have an election. You're going to get inaugurated. You're going to have a Congress. And the show is going to keep going on. Essentially saying that what you have in America is the best that you're ever going to get in America. And Hillary Clinton didn't disappoint. She came right along and insisted on the reason she's best for America is because she is willing to only go for the things that she feels will easily get done, which is, by the way, a very bad assumption when you consider the fact that nobody is hated more in the United States in the GOP Congress than Madam Benghazi. I happen to think the Benghazi chase is a goose chase, is a witch hunt. However, why would we believe that she would be able to get more things done with this GOP Congress or any derivation or any subsequent Congress when they hate her more or as much as they hate Barack Obama? So they want you to believe that lie. But anyway, the point is this. I digress. The point is this. Chris Matthews and Hillary Clinton and people like them, they represent the establishment. They have benefited from the establishment. They don't see anything wrong with the way Washington, D.C. works. They don't see anything wrong with trickle-down economics. And in this interview, Hillary Clinton derides trickle-down economics as something that is bad, but will not admit to the fact that even with the Bush tax cuts, or our inability to completely roll back those tax cuts completely, as well as roll back some of the 1981 Ross Kemp tax cuts that created this paradigm in the first place, we are still living in a Ronald Reagan trickle-down economic system. So she throws up trickle-down economics as something to scare Democrats, when in actuality, she is Reaganomics light. She is Reaganomics like, not 2.0. She's like the downgraded version of Reaganomics. And they are okay with this because they benefit from this. They are direct beneficiaries from the way things are. Somebody on the show last night discussed, I think it might have been a Noah, which, by the way, thanks everybody for joining me last night. Somebody discussed last night that there are people who look at the system and say, we are the beneficiaries of the system. So why would we want somebody like Bernie Sanders, who's coming along, who wants to revolutionize the system? Well, the fact of the matter is, most of us are not beneficiaries of the system. The majority of Americans are on the receiving end of this system. Case in point, I was talking with someone I consider a friend, so I will leave them nameless. And I was in D.C., and I was, well, hell, I'll tell you guys, I was applying for jobs to work for a congressman, multiple congressmen in a moment. I was like, whatever, I'm good. I'm talented. Let me just go to D.C. and get me a job. And so I had a lunch. This was at least 7 years ago. And I had a lunch with a guy who I consider a mentor in some regards. I consider him a mentor. And he was on the staff for a well-known congressman. And we sat down and had lunch, and I was like, hey, put your boy on. I'm trying to get in. I want to get in, and I want to work for a congressman. I want to work for a senator because I like American politics, and I'm particularly good. I have a particular set of skills, right? And we had this great lunch, and we talked about it. And at the end of the day, at the end of the conversation, he said, listen, Ben, let me tell you something. I'm not lying to you guys. This is 100% truth. I'm not even mentioning names to keep the person safe, right? He said, there are a lot of people. He's a Democrat. The congressman was a Democrat. He said, there are a lot of people who are yelling at us to change the system. He said, there's a lot of people who are yelling at us to get money out of politics. And he told me, he said, we're not going to do that. He said, I'm not going to advocate for that. You know why? I like the system exactly the way it is. And I absorbed it all. He said, the way it works great for us. And I'm like, Now I wasn't as I had more F's to give back then because I was trying to get a job. I don't have any F's to give these days because I don't need anybody else's job, build my own thing. But it really spoke volumes that a representative that I highly respect, that I've known for years, and somebody who worked for him that I've known for years and I respect even more than the senator, would really just be candid and admit that the system as it is works just fine, even for Democrats. At that point, after that conversation, it would be a great story if I said I never pursued a position there, but I kept trying to get a job there. And the only reason I'm not working there is because I guess I wasn't good enough for them. So, But years later, when I sat down and thought about that thing, I'm like, we are fighting. We are fighting not just against conservatives. We're not just fighting against Republicans. We're fighting against Democrats who are just as much beneficiaries of this rotten system as any Republican would ever be. And we see that with Hillary Clinton. We see that with Chris Matthews. They are direct beneficiaries. They have become wealthy on this system while the rest of us are being broken by this system. And once you realize that we are fighting just as hard against some Democrats as we are some Republicans to fix a broken system, you no longer care about this imaginary loyalty that they want you to have to the Democratic Party. Let me give you one more anecdote. Just because you vote Democrat all your life does not mean they have any loyalty to you and you should have any loyalty to them. And this is real. Listen, I've been in a lot of places and I've always been the outsider wherever I went. And maybe that was a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that I was never the insider. I was always the person sitting out, having to look in at everyone else's connections. And so as I begin to matriculate, as they would say, through the political system in a certain state, I've been in a lot of states, so don't try to figure out which one. In a certain state, I realized that they are commanding and demanding a loyalty from me that they have not reciprocated. And they simply want me to fall in line because I have historically voted Democrat. And it doesn't matter what this candidate actually represents or really is going to do. All I need to know is that they are Democrat and I need to be loyal to them. Well, when your policies are not loyal to me, I don't give a rat's ass that you are a Democrat. Your policies are not loyal to me. Therefore, I cannot be loyal to you. And so this idea that we must simply acquiesce and fall in line and be good Democrats is exactly a part of the problem when our Democrats are benefiting from this broken system the same way they complain about Republicans benefiting from the system. I'm feeling a little bit better. Maybe I can go the distance. Caller, you're live on the air, 510. Thanks for your patience. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Body. And so quick points. Well, one, I'm sick and tired of billionaires telling people that make $12,000 a year they can't afford a raise. Two, I'm sick and tired of multimillionaire politicians like Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, and Hillary Clinton telling us we can't give people who make $12,000 a year a raise or that they can't get health care.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
How do these people become worth tens of millions of dollars while in office? All of them. Now, here's another thing I read that's very interesting. Before Iowa, Barack Obama, President Obama, had more endorsements. Bernie Sanders has none. More of the establishment was backing President Obama, and no one is backing Bernie Sanders except Keith Ellison, who I respect a lot. I hope he might be VP pick, and Raul Grijalva, two of the best congressmen. That's it. Bernie is worth $400,000. He has a house. That's it. After 30 years, he never sold out. So the thing is, I think the establishment thought he was going to be like Martin O'Malley. He couldn't even raise $1 million. Right. He went in the hole, $600,000. The fact that Bernie raised $100 million from me and you, that's unprecedented. No one saw that coming. That George Soros has wrote a $10 million check to Hillary Clinton, personal check. Why? What for? Because he loves us? I don't think so.
Absolutely. Bobby, right?
Yes.
Thanks so much for the call, man. Your points were definitely made. I want to grab this next caller, 857-600-0518. I want to check those numbers too, though. I don't believe has Bernie Sanders raised 100 million. I know he has had 3.3 million donors or donations, and he's raised a whole lot of money. But somebody double check. I just want to make sure the numbers that go across the screen and my audio and my sound are accurate. But the sentiment of what he's saying, is absolutely accurate. And I agree with you 100%, Bobby. We just want to check those numbers. 826, Patrick in Miramar. What's going on, my brother?
What's going on? I'm all right, man. I think there's something that we're missing. Mm-hmm. And I think I missed it as well. It's very nuanced, but Chris Hayes actually touched upon it, I think it was his last segments today on the show, is that we're witnessing the policing of the conversation on the Democratic side. Mm-hmm. And particularly Iowa very well may be the first domino that's fallen as a result of the DNC limiting the debates, putting them in times that we can't see them, and limiting engagement, because they're trying to figure out why the Democratic turnout was significantly lower than Republican turnout.
Right.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, they're coming off a Democratic president, so I'm sure that gives more incentive to come out and caucus. But I mean, we're talking about almost more than 100,000 voters less.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a significant decrease. And they're talking about the Democrats have committed, I think Katrina Vanden Heuvel said this, professional malpractice. They've conceded the conversation to the Republican Party.
Yes.
They were always on debates. It was always on prime time. Of course, the Trump thing amplified them, don't get me wrong. But there wasn't a Democratic narrative. Even before the first DNC debate, it was almost a month and a half after the Republican debate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this has become the dominant narrative. So I want to see if New Hampshire and Nevada is the same way. Because if that is, to me, I think that's even more devastating than electing Hillary Clinton. The fact that we have policed the conversation so much, and we've catered it and sacrificed getting the message out there just to elect one person.
You know what? I absolutely agree with that assessment, and particularly by the fact that we are responsible for the excitement in our base. We pretend as though we don't have something to be excited about. By pretending as though we don't have something to be excited about, it protects the establishment. It protects, it so-called protects President Obama's legacy. But that's a very myopic view of what life is really about and what achievement is really about. I do not want my son to protect my legacy by only accomplishing what I accomplished. That is not success. I want my heir apparent and my daughter, my son and my daughter, to run much further than I could have ever imagined. And the way you honor President Obama's achievements is by doing more than what President Obama did. You don't just enshrine us in this moment. They're trying to, in order to elect Hillary Clinton, they are stifling the conversation so that they can keep us from ever getting excited about doing more. And in order to do that, they must enshrine the Democratic movement right where President Obama is, meaning we don't want to go further. That is the quintessential definition of conservatism, to hold us at a point in time where you can control the political conversation, where you can control the political outcomes, because it fits neatly into your personal benefit. And that is what has happened across the board, from Debbie Wasserman Schultz down to all of the Hillary bots online who are just insisting that everything that President Obama did is the best way that we respect it is by not doing anything else. Instead of saying we can do even more and we can stand on his shoulders and go even further. Something like that, Patrick, would have galvanized progressives across the nation, where we could have said we did so much with President Obama, but we can do so much more. And if you guys come and get out and you vote, then we can build on the achievements of President Obama, and we can go even further into the progressive values that he stood for, but he could not all achieve them all because of an intransigent Congress. That message would have resonated so much that we would have maintained a record turnout, but instead we had record low turnout.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll add is that, but if anyone tries to even inject that narrative, they're shut down, and not just by the TV media. We've seen the Washington Post. I mean, there has been a policing of what's considered acceptable discourse on the left that I've never seen before. I've seen it on the right, but I've never seen that kind of.
But Patrick, they're doing
before.
They're doing the job of the right. People like Chris Matthews is out there making it terrifying to believe, to even consider somebody like Bernie Sanders, because he's labeling him as a socialist in the pejorative sense, as if it's something to be feared. And so they're policing the conversation. They're controlling how wide the Overton window is, and they're manipulating they're suppressing their own voters, because progressives, by definition, we may be idealistic, but it's because we believe, we vote based on inspiration. Tell me an election where we came out and voted in record numbers because we were angry, right? President Obama in 2008, we had every reason to be angry at George W. Bush. But that's not what got us to the polls. What got us to the polls was the inspiration that Barack Obama channeled through us. Patrick, thanks so much for the call, man.
As always, thank you, man.
Awesome. 857-600-0518. I might have to end on time tonight, guys, because I feel like total crap. And actually, let me holler back at Bobby. Somebody just pulled up the numbers for me. So they said Bernie Sanders has raised $93 million. That's close enough for us to round up to 100 million. So yes, Bobby, your numbers were close enough for me, and that is amazing. That is amazing. Hillary Clinton, with all of her establishment endorsement, has raised $118 million. Thank you, Jennifer Dillon, over in Spreaker chat room. You did that research for me on the fly. $118 million. That's not including her super PAC money. Bernie Sanders, $93 million, is not including his super PAC money from the nurses union. Here we go. This is the graduate level propaganda that comes from Hillary's supporters. I knew there was one more. So they tried to make this false equivalency between the nurses union that follows Bernie around and has raised like $2.3 million on Bernie Sanders. Whew, man, I'm trying to make it, folks. $2.3 million they raised for Bernie Sanders, compared to, let's say, Priorities USA, who has raised $50 million for Bernie Sanders, for Hillary Clinton. They make this false equivalency, and then they run out on the interwebs and they run out onto their media platforms and say Bernie Sanders is directly benefiting from this PAC money, and he's saying that he's not using super PAC money, whereas Bernie Sanders has absolutely no coordination with the nurses union. And Hillary Clinton does have some coordination, which she shouldn't, but there is some coordination in terms of spending, in terms of campaign ads, right? They're spending money in places where she now doesn't have to spend money. That's coordination, right? I don't care what anybody says. If somebody is spending $10 million in a certain area and I don't have to spend it and I don't spend it, that means that I knew that money was going to be spent. But anyway, I digress. The point is they make this false equivalency between $50 million and $1 million. They run and they attack Bernie Sanders over the $1 million, for which he has no control over, and say nothing about the $50 million because Bernie Sanders is just as bad as Hillary Clinton, 5-1, right? Not even 5-1. What the hell am I talking about? Yeah, I'm going to end soon in a minute, folks. But anyway, the false equivalency is exactly what conservatives do. They try to make everything a wash so that we really can't have a conversation on the fact that Bernie Sanders is doing all of this on small donor money. And the $1.3 or the $2.3 million that he gets from super PAC, from a nursing super PAC funded by the people, a union, compared to no telling where this money comes from in Priorities USA. They try to make it a wash and make it an equivalency when it is very far from any type of equivalency. But yet, if they can make this false equivalency, and I'm going to say it as many times as I need to, then they make it a wash, and we can't talk about how exciting and how significantly different Bernie Sanders' campaign is because, Bernie Sanders is just as bad as Hillary Clinton on money, when that is not true. That is propaganda level Super Saiyan. That's exactly what that is. That's what conservatives do. And so to me, if you have to use false equivalencies, low voter turnout, you have to control the narrative, you have to suppress the conversations, you have to use false equivalencies, and I've repeated that already, then to me, based on the definition that I go on, plus you're not going to do anything really for the middle class, right? You are Reaganomics light. You may not be as crazy as Reagan himself, but you're not going to take us enough back from the direction that he started because you're a beneficiary thereof. All of these things add up to me to say, no, you're not a progressive Hillary Clinton. You are more of a conservative. You would be a conservative compared to any number of politicians in the past. All right, let me take this last caller because I don't think I can do much more tonight, folks, but it has been fun. This caller has been patient. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Ben, it's David again. Thanks
David.
for giving me, I guess, the end of the call at end of the show.
No problem.
I just wanted to take it back real quick to something that you said about how Democrats expect you to toe the line, basically, and just fall in line and support them regardless of who it is and what the stance is, what the issue is.
Yep.
Because and this irks me in so many ways. I see it no matter where it is that I'm looking regarding politics, whether it be social media, whether it be conversation in person. I see it's not just establishment. It goes to the point of how far everyone has been just soaking in what they hear and taking it as is without deep thinking, without critical thinking. No matter what is said, and a prime example is Bernie Sanders, because he's not a Democrat as far as registration goes, because he's not, because he hasn't been officially part of the party. You know, he doesn't deserve to be in the race. He doesn't deserve to be fighting for progressive values. And they're constantly saying, you have to support Democrats. You have to support the party. But if the party doesn't no longer stands for what progressive stands for, what the left stands for, then it's no longer the party for progressives. Exactly.
What's the point?
And Hillary supporters may very well have. I'll make this part fast because I can tell we got to end the show. But,
you can hear it
I see you waving yourself on the camera. But I'm sure that some Hillary supporters have valid reasons, and it's not just she's a woman.
Right.
I would never go there because everyone's entitled to their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I see people voicing these things in terms of Democrats and saying, we need Democrats. We need Democrats no matter what. It shouldn't be about the D or the R next to your name. And I feel like not enough people, somehow they don't grasp that. It's not about the letter. It's about the positions. And yes, politicians don't. It's very hard to trust and buy into what politicians say because they don't. They just pander, and that's across the board. But
absolutely,
it just seems to me. What's that?
No, I was saying absolutely, man. Listen, David, you had some.
Seems to me that they. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, man. I hate to cut you off. You had some great points, dude, but I think I've tapped out. I'm going to go ahead and call it a night and do what I have to do and cool off because I'm nauseous here. But hey, appreciate it. We'll cut that up and include it. And folks, everyone, I thank you so much for hanging out with me. I wanted to go much longer tonight, but hey, it was good, right? Let me go to bed before I jump the shark. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show, and I will see you guys. Before we do that, of course, I want to play at the end of the show. At the end of the show, I want you to hear my new Benjamin Dixon fanfare music that we are going to do for election. But other than that, listen, go to Spreaker and subscribe on YouTube, become a Patreon. Thanks to, let's see, I just got an email, Anthony H. Sr. Thank you for your pledge. Everyone else, if I ever missed someone who pledged, I apologize. I'll go back through and make sure I give everyone a shout out. If you ever pledge, I want to make sure I'm following you on Twitter so we can keep the conversation going. Jealous people do bite. There's people who are like, there's guys out there talking about how much money I'm making doing this show. Go look at Spreaker. What you see on Spreaker is what I make doing this show on a monthly basis. We're not making any money. We're doing this because we're passionate about it. We're doing this because we're passionate about progressives. And if they're mad about this little $200 that we get a month, this shit, y'all gonna be real mad when we breaking $20,000. Because one thing we ain't gonna do is stay poor forever. We will fix that, and we're gonna do it on the necks of conservatives. I'm done.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Crazy mother.
If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Blah, 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 blah. Good night, folks. Super long fade out.